warm welcome to this Manage Krishi Gandhi Knowledge Series. Eminent persons from the field of agriculture and also from the development sector who have worked a lot and then who have given a lot to the society, sir, in terms of different outputs and outcomes. So they have influenced the society, and such people are invited to share their lifetime experiences with the extension professionals, sir. So it is, as our Director General is saying, that it is difficult to invite everyone. So we would like to invite only few of the selected audiences and then record these sessions and then disseminate to through various social media to all the extension officers and functionaries who are to the last mile, sir. Last mile extension worker also should be able to listen to and then get influenced by the lifetime experiences of the eminent people, eminent persons. And we are going to video record and disseminate, sir. And this year we are planning to conduct 12 such series so that we can get very important and very useful information and then experiences from the eminent people, sir. So we are very happy to invite you, sir, for this program. And as I was sharing, actually we wanted to invite sir to manage campus and then have this session, but due to this pandemic we are conducting all these sessions through online only. So warm welcome, sir. So I would like to request our Director General to kindly introduce our Dr. Shobhana Pattanayak, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Jaya. Good morning to everyone present in this very important dialogue. It is a privilege of Managed Family to extend a warm welcome to Dr. S.K. Pattanayak. Sir needs no introduction actually to Managed Family, because it is reaching the last mile extension worker. It becomes my duty to give a brief introduction to the very esteemed speaker. Dr. S.K. Pattanayak is a 1982 IAS officer, served the nation for 36 years and went on to become Secretary to Government of India, Agriculture. Academically, he earned several degrees from BITS Pilani, National Law School, Bangalore, École Nationale d'Administration, Paris, and a doctorate from Gulbarga University. He served all the important departments which relates to agriculture. He served in Fisheries Department, Horticulture Department, Watershed Department, Ecology and Environment, and very sensitive and important responsibilities were also given. Sir belongs to Karnataka Cadre IAS, so very sensitive and important departments were also given, like excise and home. And he also represented India as Minister Agriculture in FAO, and also permanent representative for World Food Program and IFAD. He also took up the responsibility of President, Executive Board, World Food Program. As a Joint Secretary, he was a Mission Director for National Horticulture Mission. This is the time we saw drastic changes in the way we manage horticulture. In fact, earlier we used to focus more on the production, but later we started focusing on value addition and market linkages, branding and export. Several policy reforms, programmatic reforms were brought by Sir, but a very important contribution of Sir, which the country will ever remember, is the Pulse Revolution brought by Sir as Secretary Agriculture. You all know that we feel the shortage of pulse and we used to import it. Even though we say we are a food secure nation, but we had shortage of pulses. We used to import it. But Sir took very important policy reforms and programmatic reforms, and also changes at delivery mechanisms, extension also, to bring the Pulse Revolution. As a result of that, the pulse production increased from 17 million tons to 24 million tons in a very short period of time. So the kind of foundation sir put for Pulse Revolution, it continues, and I'm sure that this is going to inspire other sectors also. We have shortage of oil seeds. Probably this will inspire while handling this shortage of oil seeds also. And the kind of revolutionary changes he brought in NAFED, that will be remembered by all the farmers in this country. It is the great privilege of Manish sir to listen to you. Actually, sir, I will take another 1 minute about Krishi Gyandeep Knowledge Series lecture. Sir, we have more than 1 lakh extension workers spread across the country. They have to provide leadership of change to every farmers, because we want change in agriculture. Extension workers are the change leaders, but for change leaders, they need to be inspired all the time, motivated all the time with very rich experiences. Because of their geographical isolation, they don't have access to rich experiences. So Manage has taken an initiative. We created a platform of Krishi Gyandeep Knowledge Series lecture. Eminent professionals will come and share their lifetime experience. That is converted into film, and we ensure that it reaches every extension worker in this country and extension organizations across the world. We have more than 1 lakh individuals and organizations in our mailing list. All the people receive this, and it is again, it is a privilege of Manage sir. I would like to extend a warm welcome to you, and we are eager to listen to you, sir. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. Am I audible?
Sir, clear, sir.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. At the very outset, I am grateful to Manage under the dynamic leadership of Dr. Chandrasekhar. I have been invited to speak to you today, and I'm also grateful equally to Dr. Jaya, who is hosting this particular conference. And I am sure that at the other end, I have an illustrious list of very renowned people who have engaged themselves for the cause of agriculture and for the general, in general, and in particular regarding extension. Dr. Chandrasekhar has made my task easy. In fact, he asked me to share my experience. I shared with him that I would like to speak on what I did as a Secretary Agriculture. And that was not very much in the distant past. It was in the year 2016 that I joined. And when I joined, the country was witnessing one of the worst periods in history in terms of the availability of pulses. The year 14, 15, and even the year before, and including the year 16, 17, the country also witnessed a prolonged period of drought, which resulted in impacting the production to such an extent that not only the grain production there was a dip, but also the pulse production was at its lowest. The production that year, in the year 2015-16, end of 15-16, means it was roughly 17 million tons, and a requirement that year was the tune of roughly 19 to 20 million tons. So it is not that. So you can imagine how it would impact. And there was naturally a price rise. You may recall the tur dal, or red gram as we know in Andhra Pradesh, the pigeon pea, that touched a high of 180 rupees per kg. And that is, our country is a vegetarian country, more or less. The pulses are known as the poor man's protein. So you imagine to what is the extent to which our poor people, they also cannot buy at 180 rupees a kg and eat pulses to meet their protein deficiency. Secondly, so the government was very much worried, and my first task was that, as the secretary of the department, that how to meet this crisis. Of course, import was a very easy thing, but importing means we are perpetually dependent on other countries. And there has been imports of pulses for a pretty long time. We import chickpea from Australia, the yellow peas, which is used to make besan in this country partially by grinding it. That comes from Canada. And we do significantly import tur dal from Burma, from Mozambique, from Malawi. And of course, their logistics and the scale of supplies, in fact, they were very happy because they say we are producing for you, but actually they were making a lot of money in the process. And our poor farmers, on the one hand, of course, they are they impacted them because they did not have the the earning power in terms of they never took advantage of this crisis. In fact, any crisis should be taken advantage by our own people, not by foreigners. So it was a big task. Then we realized that over a period of time, the pulse production in the country has actually stagnated around 13 to 14 million tons, 17 million tons. It has not never gone up. In fact, the year 13-14 was the only year when it touched more than 18 million tons. But after that, then there was a dip. So this being the state of affairs, it was a marathon task. So we got together with our counterparts in terms of the ICR friends and also the experienced people, including the various stakeholders in state governments, knowledge partners. And we devised a strategy. A strategy had to be immediately put in place. Whenever you put a strategy in place, you need resources. The first thing is I knocked the door of Government of India. They said, okay, money is not a constant. You tell how much it was. And they were good enough to give exclusively 550 crores of rupees, only earmarked for pulse production. And that I got it very easily. And but then we had to do something. So first thing, we have to send a signal to our farmers that we mean, business, we're serious business. So as you know, there has been a demand in this country for MSP. The MSP was massively hiked for all the pulses, especially for the to begin with for the Kharif pulses, and then later on the Rabi pulses. And if you see the history, I don't want to go into statistics because you're all learned people. There was a significant jump to the extent of 20 to 25% in terms of MSP increase that very year in terms of those niche crops. And subsequently, of course, the government in 2018, you may recollect, there was another dip, another jump in MSP because the government decided we will give 150% of the cultivation cost as MSP for all the crops. So we got a sustained support from 2016-17, as a result of which there was a signaling to the farmers that if they produce, that will be bought at a higher cost. Now, only declaring MSP is not enough. It has to be backed by, certain hard decisions to procure. And that guarantee was also done. To give an example, in the history of India, it was for the first time that a buffer stock for pulses was conceived, and the government declared we will buy 2 million tons of pulses in that very season. That is the season of 2016-17, just after the Kharif was over. And the NAFED was brought into view, NAFED, the SFSC, as well as FCI to some extent, but it was primarily in the NAFED which did the procurement. And you would recollect that India only had the concept of buffer stock for only rice and wheat since the Green Revolution. And it was the first time in history that buffer stock was conceived and operated upon only in the year 16-17. And there was a guaranteed procurement for which the signal went to the farmers that government is serious, and they also participate, they contributed their might for the production. Second important thing, it's not enough. You all know that the way hybrids have changed history, high yielding varieties have changed history in the cereal crops, that same benefit have not come to the pulses. There has been a stagnating yield in terms of productivity for the varieties which are available in the public marketplace. So, however, with that constant in mind, we ensured that, okay, that doesn't matter. Research may take some time to really hit new varieties which will have a significant jump in yield. But let us give the quality seeds to the people. Even quality seeds in the field of pulses are not available to the people. So to make it available, forget about imparting the knowledge. First of all, where is the physical availability of it? So we made a calculation with our brothers from ICR, and it was the first time again in 2016 that we set up 150 seed hubs in the country. And these seed hubs were exclusively dedicated for the production of pulse seed. It was located in the KVKs, in the ICR institutions, in the University of Agricultural Sciences, and even in the participation of whosoever wanted to do the seed production. And that created a really a big change, sea change in the availability of our pulse seed. Coupled with that, we also ensured that this mini kits, in the form of mini kits, this seed is made available to the farmers. And parallelly, we also took steps that the frontline demonstration in clusters or in individual plots using the varieties whom we thought was the best was also taken up in a very big way. And that sort of, catapulted our farmers to go for this in a big way. Secondly, knowing that the productivity will not jump overnight, we also did a massive exercise in how to extend the area, how to expand the area. And to expand the area, the first and foremost, of course, you all know where pulses are grown, which kharif crops are grown where, rabi pulses are grown where, and all this we know. But apart from that, there is huge potential that people are not taking to it because of certain reasons. We mapped the entire country in terms of where there is still potential and we have not tapped it. So we moved into, first and foremost, introducing intercropping with other crops. Intercropping was one of the biggest interventions which we made that year, along with the help of our friends from the state governments. And this intercropping was introduced not only in the mainland states where it used to grow, we also extended it to the new areas of Northeast and the eastern regions. And this also impacted us. Secondly, mixed crops, I mean intercropping and all this we did. Secondly, we targeted the rice fallow areas. You know, the eastern region of this country, starting from Bihar, West Bengal, Odisha, all these states, including even Andhra Pradesh, there is a huge rice fallow. We have computed some 10 million hectares of rice fallows are available. That is, people grow rice and then keep it fallow in the Rabi season, and they don't grow anywhere. Of course, there is residual moisture, and this residual moisture can be used to grow pulses. Pulses do not demand a lot of water. They need water, no doubt, but it does not need so much of water like other water intensive crops. So there stood a great potential to really do it. But people are not doing because of several reasons. One is moisture is not sustainably available throughout in Rabi. Number two, there is no seed or some of these constants which I told, there is no incentive. So why I will grow a second crop? People don't grow it. They leave it fallow. So we went to each and every state of those. We conducted a meeting in, I remember it was in Bhubaneswar that I had a meeting. We conducted meeting in Calcutta. We sent officers to Jharkhand, and we impressed upon each of the state government, and targets were assigned, of course, apart from assigned in the sense in consultation with them, that what was the potential, what is the money required. And with that planning, actually we harnessed close to 20% of the rice fallow areas. I won't say. Even now also there is plenty of rice fallow still available, but that also we harnessed and we made use of it. Secondly, you all know, because some of you are from Hyderabad, these pulses are grown in not so soil rich in nutrients. So or water, so water is one of the biggest constraint. Due to the particular agroclimatic areas, we receive some showers to grow, let's say, pigeon pea, tur dal. But sometimes these particular showers do not come because of climate change. Nowadays, we are not getting it at the right time. So what we did, we gave an incentive in terms of whosoever wants to do a life-saving irrigation, some sort of incentive was also given to the farmer some incentive was given, so that he is motivated to really introduce a life-saving irrigation in case these showers fail at the appropriate time. Whether it is black gram, green gram, or tur, these showers come at an interval of 20 to 30 days, but sometimes it fails. So that is why we also introduced this, and farmers also came to know that government is giving us this help. So they were very happy about this particular thing, and they also introduced it. So because of this also, it really impacted them. Then apart from that, we also ensured that the liberal regime which we had in terms of importing things from outside, that is given, we clamped down on it. We impressed on the government that you must impose tariffs within the bound rate. Means, all know India is signatory to the WTO. So therefore, they are not going to allow us to completely stop, but you can impose tariffs. The government is free to impose tariffs within those bound rates, which has been defined by our relationship with WTO. But we were far below those bound rates. And for each crop, we found out how much was the bound rate and what was actually being imposed upon when we used to import these grains, these pulses. So within those limits, the tariffs were also hiked. So this put in a lot of pressure on the foreigners, and this also created a good environment for our farmers, and they got the confidence. Yes, government is very serious. They are not going to import it, open the gates, and flood with cheap alternatives from outside. This also gave them a lot of, and the market then became buoyant for them. So we use the tariff barriers as a weapon to also bring this favorable climate within our own country. Now, a combination of all this, I would say, I will also discuss some other aspects. A combination of all these led not to the increase in production from 17 million tons, you may say. You can check the statistics. The production, which was stagnating around 17 million tons, showed an immediate jump in the very next year. That is, the year next was, I'm speaking about 16-17, that was 17-18. The jump was to 24 million tons as per my estimate. But the reported figures that year is 25.2 million tons. Now, jumping from 17 million tons, even assuming 24 million tons, you imagine what is the percentage increase. Even in the Green Revolution time, our production jumped, spread over 8 to 10 years. But it is in very recent history that this pulse production, it was a revolution. I can use the word revolution, but nobody uses it because it is like, familiarity breeds contempt type. So when it becomes old, then people remember, not immediately, oh, nothing has happened. In fact, I was challenged that this is only 1 year. Next year, you see, it will dip because you got good monsoon. That is the reaction I got from some of my brethren, that no, this is because you got good rains. I told, we are also getting good rains earlier also. This is not going to dip. This will be sustainable. And you take the statistics from 17-18, this 24 million tons has been consistently produced, including this year, which is a little less than 25 million tons. So for all these 5 to 6 years, there is a production jump from 17 million tons to 24 million tons, and this 24 million tons has been continued to be maintained. Now, this is something I would say like a second green revolution, which is in the area of pulses. Now, having said that, since I am addressing a group of people who are so much dedicated to the field of extension, you please remind me of the time when I need to stop, but I'm just saying. So, in the ways, there is a lot of scope to even improve productivity in the area of pulses. Apart from irrigation, which I was life-saving irrigation, which I mentioned, there has been very good research done in some of the areas, like bringing out varieties which are called the early maturing variety. Now, the early maturing variety will be very helpful to accommodate the crop between 2 crop seasons, and therefore there is a need to introduce them. We have also introduced them. There is a need to focus on thermotolerant, high-yielding varieties which are suitable for rice fallows. That is very important, because you know that this is the one is thermotolerant. Another is, though the crops don't need much water, they are very sensitive to water logging. We should not allow water logging, and therefore how to have water logging tolerant varieties, that also we must think of concentrating. There have been some research, some breakthrough, but not much. There's a need to do that. Secondly, we must study the needs of, there is a large scope to grow this rajmas. which can be grown in northeast area where we have really not lentils, field peas, which we have not really taken advantage of, and we can do that so that we can increase our production to a significant extent. Then it has been seen that seed priming along with micronutrients can significantly improve the yield. So if we resort to this also will significantly improve production. We must ensure that our soils which we select, they should be sandy or sandy loam or loam, so that the crop which is sensitive to water logging, it will have a better environment to grow. Then we must also see that apart from seed priming, we must do seed treatment with fungicides, which we generally don't do. So that can be also do along with certain other things like PSB or trichoderma, other things also we can resort to, and it has been seen that that also significantly contributes to productivity. Apart from that, it is also sensitive to zinc, sulfur, and other micronutrients. That can also be, our extension people can perhaps give this message. Pigeon pea is especially responds very well to transplantation. So we must introduce that, how to transplant and then plant the pigeon pea. Secondly, raised bed and furrow system is also been introduced in some parts where the productivity has been impacted. That is also another area which we must impress upon the farmers to go for raised bed and this rich furrow system. Honeybee is also a very important agent for cross-pollination, we know, but such of those cross-pollinated crops like red gram is very much sensitive to it. There are also crops like grass peas, which are also sensitive to it. And this, if introduced, can improve the productivity by as much as 15 to 20%. So this also has been seen in some of the farms, and we have spread this message. And secondly, if you irrigate chickpea and lentils at the branching stage, then immediately the production goes up by 20%. So some of these practices can really be adopted, and this message should be going to the farmers. Apart from that, some research has gone and some varieties have come out which are machine harvestable varieties. Now this needs to be spread out among the farmers in a very big way. Machine harvestable varieties should be introduced in the coming days to further increase our yield and also to reduce the cost of cultivation. That's very important, because there should be sustained interest in producing pulses because of the fact that farmers should get a better price. So, and nowadays labor is not available. So there are machine harvestable chickpea varieties which can be introduced, and the success story of mechanization which has happened in cereals should also be extended to pulses. Now, the most important constraint today faced by pulse production is our production again has stagnated around 24 million tons, but we need to increase that. Now, how do we do that? For that, we have to invest massively on research and development. We have to use the modern tools of breeding, like genome editing. That's a very important tool. We have used it elsewhere. We should introduce it very rapidly in this particular field. We have state-of-the-art, research institutes, but they need to concentrate their research not on cereals, on these crops. Let me tell you at this stage, it's not important. It is no more important to concentrate on wheat and rice for research purpose, because R&D in cereals is not only done by India, it is done across the globe, and global funds are made available to it. There is an International Rice Research Institute, there is an International Wheat Research Institute, and all those things, that there is a global attention for that. But so far as pulse is concerned, you may say there is a ICRISAT also. But see, ICRISAT is not only for pulses, and let us not think that ICRISAT is a poorer cousin of the other big organizations. It is not only does for dry land crops, it is itself a very dry institute in terms of monetary resources. So therefore, India has to invest in pulses, because pulse, we are the biggest consumer, we are the biggest producer, and we are the biggest importer. So the first two are very great. Being the biggest producer, good name. Being the biggest producer, also a very big thing, feather in our cap. But being the biggest importer is definitely not a feather in our cap. And therefore, we must we invest in R&D so that the best of scientists are directed in this particular sector. And India will continue to be dependent on pulses for its protein needs because we are overall a vegetarian country. So therefore, R&D support has to be there. We have to bring out, as I said, heat tolerant varieties, water logging tolerant varieties. We must bring hybrids. Few years back, ICRIS had brought a hybrid in pigeon pea, and but that also during our efforts to reach out, we had a number of meetings ICRIS had with seed corporations of individual states like Maharashtra, even Andhra Pradesh, and so many other states to see that those seed is made available. But it has really not caught the attention in a very big way for introduction of hybrids. We need to do more research. We need to bring more about it. Only by that only this 24 million tons can really go up to 30 million tons and all. And 5 years time was a good time. I've left the ministry. But what I want to say is this 2016-17, there was a jump. Now we are almost again hovering around 24 million tons. But the next breakthrough should come through the yield increase by way of R&D, and that is what we must concentrate. Of course, there is still scope that out of 10 million rice fallows hectares, we still have another 7 to 8 million hectares still untapped. We have so many states which really do not concentrate, and we must also insist that the MSP, which is increased from year to year, is not only increased. That's not important that we increase. We must have a procurement mechanism back them so that if there is a dip in prices, the government procures it and sells it or gives it free of cost to the people, because all our, we still have, people say, statistic 200 million people still are undernourished in this country. That's a global statistic. We may debate on that. That's a different thing. But the fact remains, significant chunk of population is still malnourished, undernourished, and therefore we must ensure that even if it is given freely, it is not going to be a waste. So procurement here is not going to waste. We need not procure rice and wheat. We can procure this as our first priority. If that is at least used, then also it will make a significant, it will sustain our interest in this particular thing. These are perhaps the things which I wanted to tell for the future. But apart from that, there are some lessons from this which we need to extend in India, as Dr. Chandrasekhar said, to the field of oil seeds. Now, why I say this? India is self-sufficient in cereal production. India has witnessed a revolution in horticulture. India has now witnessed a revolution in pulses. Though this year, it is unfortunate that we are importing pulses. And I'm not unhappy that we are importing. Always we used to import some less than 1 million tons. But very recently, government has taken a decision to move the pulses import from the restricted category to the free category. Day before yesterday, Finance Minister has made a statement on the floor of the House for a limited period up to October 31st. Now, this is required because consumers want the prices to stabilize. I think there is an increase in prices in the market. And whenever there is an increase in prices, that means our demand has outstripped the supply. And to cool those prices, the government has taken this decision for a limited period. But at the same time, such decisions also impact on the judgment of the farmer. Because the farmer, again, it is not that you and me lose out, it is the farmer who loses out in such decisions. So therefore, we have to be sensitive to this. I'm not saying whether it's good or bad. Government always takes decision in the overall interest of the people of the country and not to a particular thing. But farmers are definitely going to lose out on such decisions. So we need to give confidence. We have to further boost the production. Now, taking a leaf out of this experience, another segment of agriculture where we have utterly miserably failed, and we must accept, only when we accept that we have failed, then only we can find solutions to it. And that is the field of edible oils. Today, the import of edible oils is to the tune of 76,000 crores to 80,000 crores. Next to non-edible oils, next to import of petroleum products, the second big basket chunk of foreign exchange goes to import of edible oils. And if a strategy is put in place, then definitely we can address this gap and we can ensure that even we will be self-sufficient in edible oil production in a span of 5 years, because it is not something where pulse we could really jump the production from 17 million to 21 million tons. We cannot do the same thing on oil seeds because of a number of constraints. That is not the remit of my talk today, so I will not like to go. But the Hyderabad Institute of Oil Seeds, which is there every year, they hold conference, and they have also deliberated this subject. There's a need for policy changes at the national level, but it is possible, it is doable, and Indian scientists and Indian farmers are sufficiently resilient to face these challenges and also to stand up to the occasion to prove that they are worth. There is nobody on earth who are higher or superior to us, because this country is the only country where you have, or you name any crop, though it is not a native of this country, we have got it into our country, we have mastered production of it, and today we are very strong in terms of demonstrating to the outside world that we can do what we feel like in the field of agriculture. Though the popular notion in this country, oh, this is our farmers, our agriculture most useless, they are not up to the rise, our industry is doing well but not agriculture. This is how you put the reality in how you package and present it to the. I don't think there is any country having 140 billion people and yet self-sufficient in food. Even China is not self-sufficient in food. It imports massively for its food needs, and except than China, who is the other country which is self-sufficient? They are all very small population countries. So what is the need for comparing ourselves with such small countries where the food needs can be met by anyone? A small state of India can meet the food needs of those big countries, what they're consuming. So therefore, that's why I feel very proud to associate myself with the farmers of this country, with the scientists of this country. Everyone speaks high of a space scientist, but nobody speaks great about our agricultural scientists. You see the bias which is ingrained in the minds of so many people in this country. Whereas our agriculture scientists actually has done a revolution. Today, we are deprecated upon saying that we are exporting so much of rice. A time was there when we were not exporting a single grain of rice. Today, the government has given statistics. The agri exports have touched $42 billion. Now, if you see the component, which is the $42 billion? In marine products, it is a come down. In animal meat products, it is a come down. It is compared to last year. It's only in rice production. So the rice production has jumped, which is real. Our scientists have contributed. All these rice varieties have been developed in India, and we have really attained. Our farmers have adopted all those new techniques. It is another thing, the debate whether exporting water or not we should do. That's a different type of discussion. But the fact remains, whenever there is a challenge faced, and it is the farmer who have rose to the occasion, it is our scientists, it is our extension workers, howsoever moribund our extension staff may be. But all these messages are reaching the farmer at the field level, for which they are able to adopt these practices and able to produce. It's not that they have abandoned this. So therefore, this is one feeling, this is one thing I must take this platform to thank our extension workers spread throughout the length and breadth of this country. And not to undermine and not to touch upon the last but not least is the post-harvest aspect of our production. Now, post-harvest aspect of the production would mean that we should have all these pulses. We should be able to clean it, grade it, sort it, and package it. And for that, we need dal mills and other things. There are schemes in the ministry which is there. It's not that, but no allocation of resources were done. But that year and even subsequently, there was a significant allocation of resources for setting up dal mills in the rural area and other things. Apart from that, the farmer producer organizations have now come up in a very big way. Government has given a fillip to it, and they are in a way going to address the issues of marketing of some of these produce. And this also impacts the farmer ultimately in sending the right message that if there is a good market, if there is a good price, then there will be a good production. And this cycle only can be complete if you address the other aspect, which is post-harvest and marketing, which to some extent was done, though not to the fullest extent during that time. But I'm certain this is an ongoing process, and we must concentrate our efforts in this direction also in the coming days. So this in broadly, I want to, this is what I wanted to share. I don't want to go on and say this has been my experience, but I would like to welcome any comments on this. And if you think that there is something which has been left out, you can say. And moreover, maybe whether you really appreciate something was done or it was not done, you are free to even adversely comment. I would welcome that, because only by that we learn and we improve. So thank you very much once again, and I thought I will confine myself to this one.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Now I welcome any questions.
First of all, thank you very much, sir. In fact, the narration went like a story. You made this revolution just to understand. Started with funding from government and market, then seed hubs, eat up to which can contribute significantly for the yield production. Just like a scientist, you have examined every opportunity, and you made an important statement in the beginning of the talk that you went to the extent of seeing role for honeybee also. That shows how quickly you have examined the entire process. Being an extension organization, I feel satisfied that this journey of success in achieving Pulse Revolution is documented, and I'm sure that it will inspire many other leaders in agriculture, so that they can also apply similar strategy in other sectors also, whichever they are handling. So over to colleagues, any clarifications or questions?
Sir, good morning, sir. Ask a small clarification.
Yes, please.
Yeah, sir. Actually, we are happy now that India earlier was nowhere in case of rice. Now we are #1 exporter of rice in the world. But sir, just now I was listening to your lecture, because you told that there is a lot of malnourishment in the country. But if you look at our destinations where non-basmati rice is exported, then going to Sudan, Latin American countries, wherein the domestic price, generally we export whenever we have price advantage. But look at the domestic prices and the prices at which the rice is exported to these countries. Then is much below the export price is much below the domestic price. Then what is the rationale behind exporting to at such a smaller price levels compared to the domestic prices, sir, of rice? I'm talking, not pulses.
Okay, no, you see, there was a time when Thailand was the biggest exporter of rice. And secondly, the government has a target of doubling our, agri exports by 2024 or 25. Now, if you see the basket of agri exports by which you can double, because that's also a target which the government has kept, and country feels proud that we are the bread basket of the world. We are the granaries of the world. Now, apart from the fact whether we are exporting price at a lower price or a higher price, the question is, we are exporting. And if you are exporting agri products and rice is forming a major chunk of it, are you proud of it or are you not proud of it? Second, this is the first thing about it. Second is, are our farmers better off by exporting or not at all exporting? Because that price, it will not fetch higher price in the country if you don't export, because then there will be a surplus and it will impact the prices domestically also. So it will be not so good for the farmers if they don't export. So therefore, how it will help us by not exporting? So if it is an ideological ground, you don't want to export because you are exporting it cheap, that's a different issue. But the fact remains, at the end of it, this is how it is influencing. Secondly, let me go to the bigger picture. The bigger picture is, people think that country is strong because it is strong militarily or in space. It is not so. Through food also you can be very strong. How? If India decides, two ways, I use that. We have the numbers. Suppose if India decides to import in a very big way from another country. Let us take the example. In the year 2007 and 8, we had a wheat crisis in the country. We did not have enough wheat. We started importing wheat from all over the world. And when we imported, all the supply lines globally, they directed their efforts towards India. As a result, several countries in Africa and several countries in the third world, there was a crisis because those suppliers never supplied to those countries. They supplied to India because India was the biggest market. So it disturbed the food market of those places. And there was a crisis to such an extent that the then president of America said, India is disturbing the global food markets. So we have also a negative aspect of this food production, which we can leverage. You want to create a crisis not by putting a nuclear bomb. You start importing for your own people, there will be a crisis in the world. You harm many countries by that. I'm not saying this is a negative way of looking at it. The positive way of looking at it would be, we produce so much that the surplus we give it to other. We can leverage our relationship with other countries by giving rice at a cheaper cost to another country. They will be perpetually tied to you in obligation. So can you not use this as a weapon? So think agriculture as a foreign relations tool also, whether it is due to overproduction or due to lower production. But we have never used this weapon. We have kept it very nicely apart. Our foreign relation means only, some diplomatic things. But we can use it, we can leverage it. Just think it over. I leave it as a question, throw it back at you.
Sir, sir, I want you to kindly share your experience as founder, National Director of Horticulture Mission, and also, sir, you have served in Rome and other places, and in international forum also, sir, like FAO and World Food Program and IFAD. So kindly share your experiences of foreign experience also, sir.
With the little time I have, I don't think I can share all of them. But I can only tell that in 2005, when the National Horticulture Mission was launched, it was launched in the month of November 2005. That point in time in history, the horticulture production was lower than rice, the cereal production. You can see the statistic. And this mission was launched. Moment this mission was launched, our target was to ensure that since horticulture is high value crop, there are two twin aims. One is with lesser area, we produce high value crops and there is better earning power to the farmers. Number two, there is a conscious diversification from traditional cereal growing to that of fruits and vegetables, extending later on to medicinal plants, aromatic plants and herbs and so many other things. Apart from trying to significantly shift our attention to post-harvest and introduction of new technology like drip irrigation, like sprinkler irrigation, greenhouses, climate control, logistics, climate control growing and climate control logistics. So, and there is a massive infusion of funds to all the states. Just to sum up, because since time is less, I can tell you, in the year 2006, you could again go back, some of you can do research, you are all academic people. The government of Haryana was closing down the horticulture department because its budget was, I think, 1 crore or 2 crore. That's all, I think. And they were trying to merge the horticulture department with the agriculture department. But came this National Horticulture Mission, and the type of interventions which we did is, I think, it should be a talk for a later date. But because of the support which they received, today it is a flourishing department side by side with the agriculture department. And horticulture, I would say, the two center for excellence, which is established with Israeli technology, has been first set up in Haryana. One is a center for excellence in vegetables, another is a center for excellence in fruits. And with Israeli technology, this has been located in Haryana. So I'm just leaving it at that, but you can see all over. Today, kiwis are coming from Arunachal Pradesh. Some non-traditional fruits are also being grown. And people are today speaking of plant factories. Some are speaking of plant. In fact, the massive spread in drip and sprinkler irrigation was also a type of intervention which was launched along with the launching of the National Horticulture Mission. In fact, I was fortunate enough to steer both these in that period. So I'm just, I think that I will live. So far as the international thing is concerned, I thought that we can discuss later. There are so many things to be told. So I leave it at that. If there are any questions, can let them tell. I don't want to describe further what is my experience. On pulses, if someone can say something, I'll be happy. What is one thing in pulses, or what is that we need to do? Because it always there is scope to do many things. That's why.
Any questions, please? Any impressions? Yeah.
Yes, Madam Lakshmi.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Sir, Dr. Ramya, I'm working as consultant in Manage, sir. Sir, am I audible, sir?
Yes, yes, absolutely.
I have a small question, sir. Last year during lockdown, many of the commodities, they were traded below MSP, whether it may be cereals or pulses or oil seeds in many parts of the country. Sir, was that situation only because of pandemic or any other past experiences, sir, where pulses are traded below MSP? Or should we rely it only on pandemic?
No. See, but COVID definitely impacted everyone. And we cannot say that agriculture escaped from it. Agriculture escaped from it in the sense that production was not hampered due to COVID, but definitely the marketing got impacted. And so marketing got impacted because small players never could reach out, and therefore they had to sell at a distress locally. Though the the logistic chains or the supply chains remained intact because they took the same crop and started distributing it to people. So people were not affected, the consumers are not affected. So to that extent, it did impact. So we must take it that. But at the same time, our supply chain logistics is much more robust than perhaps the supply chain logistics of many other countries. That is how the exports of agricultural products from India increased significantly during the COVID times, because the supply chain broke down completely in several other countries, and that was taken advantage by India. And if you correlate it to the statistics of exports, you will find that it improved. Though locally the farmers was put to a great deal of hardship because of this particular reason. Did I answer it? Okay. I don't know.
Yes, thank you, sir. Thank you.
Any other things? If it is not there,
Can I have
another
a,
5? Yeah.
sir?
Yes, Mr. Tokat. Yeah.
Yeah. Regarding Nagaland,
Yes.
we are already exporting king chili and then pineapple and coffee to Africa, king chili to London. So, like, are you aware of this export that is being undertaken by the government of Nagaland?
See, your king chili is very famous all over the globe now. There is no doubt about it. But we must encourage the private players to participate, because see, government doing is one thing, but it will be only sustainable when private players come to Nagaland and do the same. Of course, part of the problem is because of logistics from Nagaland is not
Yes.
there. But now the connectivity in terms of the rail works have improved significantly. And most of most of these exportable commodities are airlifted. So that is one problem which is there, and we should have a common marketing mechanism or common logistics mechanism for the whole of Northeast, because you can't have state specific logistics. So that is the problem. Even the government of Nagaland it on its own cannot really address this issue, because see, as I told you, kiwi from Arunachal Pradesh has to reach outlet. The flowers from Sikkim have to go. The orchids from Sikkim has to go out. So, and pineapple, not only in Nagaland, pineapple also is grown by a whole lot of other states adjoining that. The
Yes.
anthuriums of Mizoram also needs an outlet.
Yes, yes.
And of course, now the connectivity through Bangladesh has improved because of some river is getting connected and all that. But we need to speed up. And secondly, our connectivity with Southeast Asia, which is also in terms of road network that has already started, but it's a very slow pace. Once that is done, perhaps we will be linked to Southeast Asia. So that will also open up our markets. So otherwise, you can concentrate only on the high value crops, and that is how it will be sustainable.
Sir,
Pineapple is not a very profitable business for many in your own state also.
okay, sir. Sir, regarding this, I'm Deputy Project Director, Atma Sundapoto, Nagaland. So like the roadmap, the marketing issue and so on, we have a sort of production gap also actually due to the terrains and so on. Now, regarding Euro gap issues, the marketing guidelines that has been issued by the European countries. Now, export policies are different. We are taken by APEDA and so on. So, like the whole notice, I believe, has got a potential for production. Moreover, export policies because it is organic in nature. So on that question, the organic value of our products the price value minimum MSP should be higher than the rest of mainland, or should it be different, sir? My question, MSP.
No, see, first of all, there is no MSP on the fruits. Let me tell you, I want to say that. So basically, you discover your price through the market, and Nagaland should command a higher price in terms of, because you are organic by default. So
Yes,
there
sir.
is, since you are organic by default, of course, we have two mechanisms which is at operation at now. One is the APEDA methodology, by which if you have to export to another country, it's only 8 to 10 mandated certifying agencies. If they certify, then only you can export it. So they have listed them. So which are the certifying agencies for organic? If it is not through that, we have what is called the participatory guaranteed approach, where you know that is the in-house mechanism for domestic markets. Now, therefore, you must ensure that certification is there, and that certification carries respect among the consumers. Then moment they see that certification, then only they are prepared to pay a whole lot of higher price. Let me tell you, without any support of the government, today in markets in Hyderabad, where Manage is located, market in Bangalore, whosoever comes out with packaged commodity where some form of organic stamping is there, it is fetching higher price, and there are exclusive outlets for such organic produce, and they are making a flourishing business. But this advantage is actually not coming to our brothers and sisters of Northeast because of the distance, number one. Number two, because in the absence of a certain mechanism, either by the government there or otherwise, nothing prevents the government also to come up with some form of legislation which says that this is pesticide free, or this is fertilizer free, this is grown in natural conditions. Some sort of thing you can bring also, because it is well within the legislative power of the state to do so, so that you distinguish your product as different from others. And definitely by that, you will be able to command a higher price in the Indian market.
Dr. Jaya?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sir, thank you very much. I think you have taken us through many different agricultural scenarios, sir. Sir, actually, your journey of making the country sustainable and self-sufficient in pulse production by using very many mechanisms like laws and WTO clamps and imports, and using the best of the soils for production of soils like sandy and sandy loam soils, and selecting early maturing crop varieties, and seed treatments, raised bed furrowing, and then furrow system, and timely critical irrigation where the fruiting takes place. And all these things have contributed, sir, and that is a huge jump, sir. Actually, as you said, it's a revolution from going from actually bringing about a small change also is very difficult. We doing it ourselves is okay, sir, but making all the other farmers also come into play and making them go through this production cycle is really great, sir. That's a huge jump from 17 million tons to 24 million tons in one single year. And that's really remarkable, sir. And we have to further boost the production, you say, and then procurement mechanisms and making India nutrition secure through pulses. That's the concept we like, sir. And sir, another one, post-harvesting and marketing also needs to be taken care to make the whole country nutrition secure. And sir, you also told about how strong we can become when we produce surpluses in various products, and then how we can use it as a weapon in the international markets, and how horticulture prospered through National Horticulture Mission. So all these experiences are very worth, sir. We can learn so much from you, sir. And sir, last but not the least, what you spoke about very high about farmers, like you compared them with the space scientists. That's really it is like very pleasant for the ears, sir, when we hear something great about farmers. Actually, they are toiling and they are working very hard, and their plight only few people are able to recognize. And when you spoke about high about farmers, that's it is honey for the ears, sir. And they are very skillful in producing both our native crops and also exotic crops. And our scientists and extensionists are reaching to the farmers in terms of technology, market, and all the other advisories. So you appreciated the farmers, extensionists, and scientists. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. And it's a long journey of you through agriculture and developmental sector, sir. So these experiences are really a learning experience for us also. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Chair, and thank you, Dr. Chandrasekhar.
On behalf of Manage Family, I would like to profusely thank you, sir, for your valuable time. You gave us a very important message today. A crisis is an opportunity, and you showed it actually. Reduce the import, gave 20 to 25% more MSP and price to the farmers, and we became self-sufficient in pulse production. But how we are going to institutionalize this past success story and we diversify into other fields is the responsibility of we all people. It is an important message. As a small step, we have documented this talk, and it will be there forever. It will be used by several training institutions which develop extension leadership in different parts of the country. Thank you very much, sir. Thanks for your valuable time. And when the situation improves, on behalf of Manage Family, sir, it is your institute, and you kindly visit us and bless us. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Chandrasekhar, for all the love and affection. Thank you, all the distinguished members of the Manage Family and all the distinguished audience for giving me an opportunity to share my experience today. I am certain that Manage will not only chronicle these in terms of documents, but reach out to others to share the experience so that everyone takes the benefit of it. I am also deeply I also am very deeply affected by the fact that you not only provided me an opportunity, but also to communicate with a large chunk of people of what we could do. Though when we are in government, we are always surrounded by people, but we never have an opportunity to communicate the manner in which I am able to communicate today. So thank you again, once again, and all the best to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, all of you, for participating in this program. And please do join in the next programs also. We are going to conduct series of programs in this series. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks to everyone. Yeah.